Welcome to the Real Estate Guys radio program. I'm your host, Robert Helms. What if you could be a fly on the wall at an amazing conversation between not one, not two, but three of the very smartest people you know? Well, in a very special edition of the Real Estate Guys radio show, you're going to hear from Robert Kiyosaki, Ed Griffin, and Simon Black. Together, today, on the Real Estate Guys radio program. Forbes rated Memphis the best cash flow market in the nation. And our good friend Terry Kerr at Mid-South Homebuyers has been the premier turnkey rental property provider in Memphis for over 13 years. With an A-plus rating from the Better Business Bureau, Terry has renovated over 750 houses. Real Estate Guys listeners have snapped up hundreds. Discover what these satisfied investors already know. Mid-South's properties are completely renovated with a 1-year warranty and a lifelong rental guarantee. They're affordable, well-managed, and easy to own. Perfect for beginning investors and veterans alike. Get in on the action. Contact Terry and his team via email at midsouth@realestateguysradio.com.
If you love real estate and have always wanted to own your own business, listen up. The Real Estate Guys and their panel of experts want to teach you how to go full-time fast in the real estate syndication business. These next few years may go down in history as one of the best times ever to acquire investment real estate. There are deals everywhere if you know where to look and how to assemble the resources. The Secrets of Successful Syndication seminar will show you how to make big money doing big deals from a team of experts that have syndicated projects totaling more than $1 billion. Don't wait for someone to give you a raise or create a job for you. Attend the Secrets of Successful Syndication and learn how to build a team, raise capital, find deals, and make full-time money in 6 months or less. Go to realestateguysradio.com and click on events. All the big players use syndication as a way to diversify risk, optimize profits, and earn big money. You can too. Go to realestateguysradio.com and click on events.
Welcome to the Real Estate Guys radio program. I'm your host, Robert Helms. It's been said you become the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And one of our favorite things to do is get around super smart people. Think about the people you spend time with and what they have you thinking and what they have you wondering and what they have you studying. A few months ago, it was the 15th Annual Investor Summit at Sea, and after the first 4 days of just craziness, Russ and I had a chance to sit down in solitude with 3 of our amazing friends and faculty members. Robert Kiyosaki, the author, of course, of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, now celebrating its 20th anniversary and the #1 best-selling financial author in history. The amazing G. Edward Griffin, who wrote The Creature from Jekyll Island and several amazing other books. And from sovereignman.com, Simon Black. It was our first port day in Roatan, and rather than go ashore, we decided, the 5 of us, to sit down and have a conversation. And rather than just keep it a private conversation, everyone agreed we'd turn it into an interview and radio program. And it's like nothing we've done before, and it's an organic conversation that went a whole bunch of really interesting places. And we've had the pleasure over the years to have those kinds of amazing conversations. And I always wished, I wish we had the mics on. This time we do. So today's show is going to be a little different in that we're going to have limited commercial breaks, and they're going to be all bunched together, and we'll present this conversation in its entirety. When we're all done, we will play real estate trivia, because you're going to have a chance to win a copy of both Ed Griffin's amazing book, The Creature from Jekyll Island, and the 20th anniversary edition of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. So when we come back, you'll be a fly on the wall in a conversation between Russell Gray, Robert Kiyosaki, Ed Griffin, Simon Black, and myself. You're tuned to the Real Estate Guys radio program. I'm your host, Robert Helms.
Live nationwide, you're listening to the Real Estate Guys. Find out more at realestateguysradio.com.
Welcome to the Real Estate Guys radio program. I'm your host, Robert Helms. With me, as usual, co-host financial strategist Russell Gray.
Hey, Robert.
Oh my goodness, are we excited and really tired. We're on the 15th Annual Investor Summit at Sea with some really, really great friends. First of all, please welcome Mr. Robert Kiyosaki.
Hello. Fabulous program, the best ever. You guys keep stepping it up every single year.
Thank you, my friend. It's so good to have you here. And returning for his 3rd year, the author of The Creature from Jekyll Island, Mr. G. Edward Griffin. Hi, Ed.
Hello, and thanks for inviting me again this year. Wonderful.
Of course. Great stuff. And no summit now would be complete without an appearance from our good friend making his 4th attempt to be at the cruise, 2 times on the boat, 2 times on the land. the amazing Simon Black. Hello, sir.
Thanks very much. You guys knocked it out of the park this year. It's been amazing.
Excellent. Well, the Spirit really is such a spiritual event, really, in so many ways. People come together and they transform their life through the ideas that they hear, through the things that they continue to discuss, and more importantly, what they do when they leave. You know, our motto is education for effective action. And I think we're at a point in the world where we need to take more control, more of our reins. And I think that's really the first thing I'd like to talk about with you guys is the fact that there are the group of folks who just sit around and wait for someone else to tell them what to do. And there's the people like we've all spent the last several days with who are taking the reins instead. So in no particular order, who has a comment on that?
Well, I think in my remarks earlier, I called it the victim mentality. I think that victims are typically the people that wait for other people to solve their problems for them, whether that happens in a voting booth or a colleague or a business partner or something. That we could see certain risks that are coming, but victims essentially outsource the solutions to other people and sit on their hands and complain, as opposed to being value creators and go out and actually solve problems.
I just come here, as I bluntly say to every one of these, there's 200 participants, I bluntly say, I don't come for you guys. I come to be among you guys. I'm here to sit and listen and learn. And I don't know how anybody cannot be sitting and learning right now. That's what that's what a victim is. They're probably out at the pool sucking down some Mai Tais right now and, wolfing down buffets all day long, which I enjoy doing too. But every time I'm walking around the deck of the Real Estate Guys cruises, I look at it and I get this feeling like I'm part of a movie, like Vesuvius is about to blow up, World War II is about to start, and people are sitting there fat and sucking down Mai Tais. And I go, it's like a bad movie many times. I come out of the Real Estate Guy's room and I go on deck and I go, geez, it's an interesting paradox.
It is interesting, and you always talk about the fact that you have to consider both sides of the coin, different perspectives, try not to judge, all those things, but at the same time, it is a real obvious change when you walk out of our little cocoon into buffet land.
Yeah, we have a doctor on board whose specialty is liposuction. I said, man, you could use a vacuum cleaner around here. And it's really feature, because I'm eating. I have an addiction to eating, so I understand the struggle of weight. But these guys lost. They're up there at the buffet with shovels, and sucking down those sweet sugary drinks and eating ice cream and pizza and all this. And you come into the Real Estate Guy's room, and it's really pretty. A different kind of excitement, a different kind of stimulus. Is because we're not victims. We're preparing for the future because we know something's coming.
Well, I think that's the thing. I mean, the world is changing so fast, just technology is changing things. We've got demographic shifts that are going on. We've got systemic things going on economically, geopolitically. The world is changing. And a lot of these macro things we talk about on the summit trickle down to Main Street. Main Street, investors. Our core demographic is real estate investors. We have to make decisions on a daily basis about interest rates, about availability of mortgages and capital. We have to look at where jobs are being created, where they're being lost, and how are we going to position ourselves in our portfolios. And when you've got a lot of uncertain times and you're not sure about the future, there's something to be said for getting together with the tribe, getting together with people that are studying like you are and bringing a different perspective. One of the things I've always appreciated, Robert, about studying with you is how disciplined you are listening to what someone else has to say before you interject or overlay your own opinion. At some point, you have to process what you've heard, but you can't digest what someone else has said unless you first consumed it. You got to listen to what they have to say, and it's a great mental discipline.
Correct.
So, Ed, I know that you have a event coming up that you call the Red Pill Expo, and maybe that's kind of an interesting metaphor to talk about. People have seen the movie The Matrix, right? You have the choice of the red pill or the blue pill, and blue pill being status quo, and red pill means you're going to get behind the curtain and see reality. Where does that tie in?
Yeah, well, I think it really ties into the topic that has sprung to the surface right here, the difference between groups of people. I guess we're calling them the buffet group now.
Which I'm part of.
But it's the group out there that seems to not care very much. And it reminds me of the complaint I often hear from people. They say, Mr. G, you're talking about all these things, and I agree with you. I've been trying to get my neighbors and my friends and my family to be interested in these things, and nobody seems to care. I mean, nobody. And what are you going to do about it? Well, I don't think we have to do too much about it except just keep moving along, because, the truth of the matter is, the guy next door pushing his lawnmower and who's not interested in these very important issues doesn't count. And that sounds like an awful thing to say. But when you look at history, all the great movements and shifts in history have been driven by 3%, 2%, 1% of the population. And the other majority, the great majority, will just not be interested. They'll follow the leaders. So this history has taught us something that maybe it was in front of our noses and we didn't see. And that is that the vast majority of people will never be interested until, of course, there's war and bombs and death and destruction and blood in the streets. Now they're very interested, but they're interested for a different reason. Now it's just survival, not what to do about it or to avert it or to change it or make it better. It's just, what do I do for survival? So I have taken great encouragement from that realization, because I realize that all we really need to do is reach out and capture the minds or share ideas with the minds of 3% or 1% of the population, and we can accomplish miracles with that if we just get off of the couch and do it.
And not everybody will.
Not everybody will, no.
So many people, for instance, their finances are in a shambles, and then someone passes them your book, the little purple book that 20 years ago came out and changed really the way a lot of people on this event, a lot of people we run into think. And just a shift in that, and then you're that pebble in the water that got their attention.
And the reason I write and I speak and I say your house is not an asset, savers are losers, and don't work for money, because money is not money anymore. It's gone. The problem today is we're in the biggest change in civilization's history. We're going from industrial age now to information age. And the trouble with the information age, information is invisible. You cannot see what's coming at you. You see, when you're the industrial age and you're riding a horse, you could see the automobile. So you kind of knew, well, maybe we can buy an automobile. So today people are riding the automobile, and what they don't see is Ubers, that they don't need drivers anymore. They can't see it. I live in Phoenix, and they're driving around Uber cars and Google cars and all this. So their assumption is, I'll always have a job. But technology, the rise of robots by Martin Ford and all that, says they can't see what's coming today. So it's like lying on the deck of this ship in between buffets, and you look up and you see some white clouds up ahead, and then you doze off, and 20 minutes you wake up and the white clouds have moved. That's what's happening to people. They can't see what's going to run them over in a few weeks. It's already running them over, actually. So everything today is invisible.
A couple of ways we can do our best to try to see, and one of those is to study the past, right? They say history doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. Simon, you are an amazing student and historian in a lot of ways, and you study the past quite a lot. In fact, your talk on the summit was amazing about that. How can the past, the history, how can what's come before teach us things we might want to be paying attention to today?
Well, because this time is never different. People always pretend that it is, and they say that. And of course, there are always subtle nuances and details and so forth. But everything that is happening and will happen has essentially already happened so many times before. So again, it's not rocket science to go back and look at this and see, gee, what happened the first 600 times that there was some big country, some big kingdom, some big empire that got into a completely unsustainable financial position. Well, we can actually go and see that, and many of these instances are well documented. We were talking earlier about politicians and how politicians and people in government in general, how conspicuous and bizarre it is that these people enter public service and they're flat broke, and then all of a sudden later they're worth tens of millions of dollars. And gee, how does that work? And I think you were talking about that, Robert. I was thinking about the Ottoman Empire, and it was actually the same thing. So similar, they had created this giant bureaucracy to the point that the Ottoman government had the position essentially that the people existed to support the government, and not the other way around. And of course, they didn't. That's one of the many former superpowers that actually no longer exists. Of course, we're not saying that exact scenario is going to unfold, but again, not the first time that you've had, I think at a minimum, a massively wasteful bureaucracy. if not rampant corruption, unsustainable finances, huge financial bubbles, and so forth. This is not the first time we've seen these things. And of course, I think it would be, with so many examples that have preceded this, it'd be quite foolish to expect that it's just all going to end up okay and there's never ever going to be any consequences from any of this forever until the end of time. That seems quite a foolish approach.
Well, what Simon talks about, which I talk about, what most people can't see is the destruction of money. It's, how are you being robbed today? If you're being robbed by working for money. And as Simon points out, if you look through history, every empire has collapsed through the corruption of money. And so in Roman times, they used to file the coin, so they'd steal the silver or whatever they had in there, or the gold, by filing it. Well, you could actually see that. And as Simon so aptly pointed out, that in '64, the U.S. did the same thing. We had silver coins. And I remember as a kid, I was like 15, 16 years old. I looked at the coin and there was this copper tinge around the quarter and the half dollar and going, what is that? And what were they doing with that copper tinge, Simon?
Filing it off.
It was their way of debasing. And the word base means they were putting a base metal in there called copper instead of silver. Now, the interesting thing happened, which is, I don't know, is it Gresham's Law, whatever it is. I immediately knew something was wrong. I was a kid, but I didn't know. Immediately, I started hoarding. I'd go to the bank. I would trade in my little dollars, and I'd get my little quarters and silver dollar, half dollars. And I started looking for anything that didn't have that copper tinge on it. And I didn't know what was affecting me, but this is what I learned, is human beings are intuitively smart when it comes to their money. You have to really dumb them down to make them stupid. But what they say is when bad money comes into circulation, good money goes into hiding. So when they tricked us all by putting this little copper tinge, which was basically, I guess it's copper, inside the,
it was zinc-plated copper. They basically created tokens out of copper and made them look like quarters and coated them in zinc so it looked like silver, but it was just made out of cheap metals.
But the average person couldn't tell it, yet there's something as a kid, I was going, my mother says, what are you doing? I'm hoarding all these quarters. And today I have a pile of silver that's so high just because instinctively I knew I was being screwed.
And of course, a lot of your work is about this exact thing, right? With understanding the Federal Reserve and the way banking works and the way money is created, which is a longer topic than we can fully discuss. But this is an important thing people need to understand. And back to your point, they don't wake up to see it.
It's definitely true. And Robert's story is amusing, especially amusing to me, because you see, he, as a kid, had figured it out at some low level, at least. He knew what to do instinctively. I had to write a book on it before I figured it out. But it reminds me when these quarters began, and the dimes and the half dollars, the real silver coins began to disappear. I thought,
they're all over at Robert's house.
Now we know where they went. But actually, my wife and I decided, well, let's do something about this. So we went to Las Vegas, and we took our Federal Reserve notes with us. We walk into the casino and give them a $20 bill or whatever it was and say, well, like some coins, please, so we can play the slot machines. Well, we'd get these rolls of quarters and dimes, take them upstairs to the hotel room, put them all out on the bed, sort them out, take the real silver ones over here, and take the phony one, put them back in the paper rolls, take them down, say, well, we're leaving, we want some money now, and we go to the next casino, and we spent 2 days doing that. Now, we didn't have a big pile of silver like you did, Robert, but we had a couple of bags of it, and a few years later, we had to use one of those bags to get us through a financial pinch. So there you saw, telescoped into one little period of time, what it's all about, It's conservation of value. It's the preservation of wealth.
Well, the thing is about that, you were doing that, Robert was doing it, I was doing it, thousands, if not millions of people were doing it. And the people who were paying attention were the ones that benefited from doing it, and the people who weren't paying attention. It's an example we give. If you had 2 rolls of quarters that fell behind your couch or whatever, you got 2 rolls of quarters, and you took one and you put it in your sock drawer, and you just let it sit there for 40 or 50 years. And you took the other roll of quarters, $10, and put it in the bank and got a passbook savings account. You would have grown a little interest, but basically your roll of quarters would have bought you maybe in 1964 40 gallons of gas, 40 quarters at 25 cents a gallon, because that's what it was. Today, that roll of quarters would only buy you maybe 1 gallon of gas. That's a huge debasement of purchasing power. People who were paying attention and knew what were happening were able to take proactive steps to protect their purchasing power, and people who were in the buffet line not paying attention lost all of that purchasing power. When we come on the summit, that's what the summit is all about. It's like getting away from the daily grind, because we're all very short-sighted. And in a world where everything is changing so fast, it's like driving a car. The faster you want to go, the farther up the horizon you have to look. If you're just looking down the front of your hood, you're going to run into something at high speed. You can get away with it when you're driving slowly. Well, the world is changing so fast right now, you've got to step back and take a look at the bigger picture. There are these things changing in the world that have direct impact on our prosperity, on our health, on our ability to earn a living, on our debt, everything that we have. And if we don't see the macro changes, we don't know how to make the micro adjustments. Locking yourself in a hotel room, counting out coins, that's micro work. But it was driven by what was happening at the macro level. And because you had a macro awareness, you knew what to do at a micro level. And that's really what the summit's all about, is how do you take that big picture and get down to tactical things that we can do to protect ourselves.
And so that's why I always say, what does school teach you about money? And hear this dead silence. You see, back in the Roman times, you could actually see somebody filing that coin down. Today, you can't see it. And I think that one of the most important words out there is a thing called fiat. What does fiat mean? The average person doesn't know. So Simon, what does fiat mean to you?
Yeah, well, it's funny because fiat comes from the Latin, basically out of nothing. It comes from it's like in the Bible where and God said, "Let there be light." Yeah. In Latin, this is the same root as fiat, as in "let there be money." It's just unelected bureaucrats, lawyers, and economists who are not elected, who are given totalitarian control of the money supply, with almost a godlike complex to say, "Let there be money." And,
as much as you
and
want.
They looked upon it, and it was bad. But somehow they convinced everybody that it was good.
It was good, yeah.
And that was the greatest trick the devil ever pulled.
What does fiat mean to you, Ed?
Well, fiat, as I understand it, is means by decree. I think it comes from the French.
Government decree. And the way they control you is you can't pay your taxes unless it's with fiat currency. So that's why you can't go to the IRS or the tax department with gold or silver, because the government says, no, we're going to throw you in jail because you're not paying taxes. No, but I'm trying to pay you in gold. No. You're going to go to jail.
They have to create demand for the fake money.
And it's through the tax system. And that's why in 1913, the Federal Reserve was created. But 1913 was the 16th Amendment, which gave rise to what we call the Internal Revenue Service today.
I call it something else.
Yeah. It cannot operate. The financial system cannot work without the taxation system.
Right.
It's really interesting,
Taxes are one of my favorite topics. I always love getting into an argument with somebody about taxes. I find it phenomenal that that there are still people who feel that there's this great moral obligation to pay tax, what an honor and privilege it is, and so forth, because they conflate the idea of paying taxes as somehow doing good. And again, this is all publicly available data. You just step back and actually look at how these people, and by the way, this goes in many respects in dozens of countries across the world, not just the United States. You can look and see how Brits spend their tax dollars and how the French, God help us, how the French spend their tax dollars, how the Italians spend their tax dollars. And you just see the just overwhelming level of waste, of fraud, and so forth. We were on the panel the other day, and I think it was Peter who was talking about how it was the same panel we were on yesterday afternoon, and Peter was saying, that was before the Fed. There was all this economic growth in the United States, and so forth. And we ran out of time, but I was right about to chime in and say, yeah, it was also at a time, all this economic growth, record economic growth in the United States, also at a time when there was no tax and there was no debt. Amazing how that worked out. But there's still people that think that, taxes, that of course they always quote, they don't know who they're quoting or why or how or in what context, but they always quote, they say, taxes are what we pay for civilized society and so forth. This is an old quote from Oliver Wendell Holmes. And of course, Holmes wrote that at a time when tax rates in the United States were 2%. 2%. That was the price. Nobody ever said that when tax rates were 40% and governments were spending millions of dollars to fund monkeys on treadmills and paying $1 billion for the Defense Department to destroy $16 billion worth of perfectly good ammunition. I'm sure Robert would have taken it off their hands without even having to take the $1 billion. So it's just madness. And I think that anybody that looks at this and sees the extraordinary level of waste, we're told, this is what we learn in our education system. We don't learn about money, but we learn how to be dutiful taxpayers, essentially. And so the thing that we're all taught in school is that when you want to make a change, you go down to that voting booth, and with this great honor and privilege we have to go and punch a what do they call it? Punch a Chad in the ballot box, and stuff an envelope in there, and that's it. And that's our power. And I find that ludicrous in business.
Especially since we can't count them afterwards.
Well, of course, right, right. And so, but I mean, the real power is frankly with what you do with your time, what you do with your money. And to me, I think if you really have a problem with your government, the best thing to do isn't to march down to the voting booth and wait every 2 years or 4 years and vote for some other guy that's just going to rob you blind, promise you the world and totally underdeliver, but to actually do what you do with children. When your children are playing with toys and they make a big mess and they're doing stupid things, you take their toys away. And the same thing, I think the best thing that anybody can do is to restrict the resources that these people have to continue squandering all of this money that's not their money to begin with. One of the things that always bugs me is when people talk about government this and government that, government property, government land, so forth. There's no government property. There's no government land. That's taxpayer property. That's taxpayer land. Government is supposed to be a responsible custodian, a trustee that manages these assets. But that's not how it is. They view it, this is our stuff. This is government stuff. This is government land. Just like the Ottomans, they view it's theirs, and the taxpayers exist to support them and not the other way around. And the only way to change that isn't necessarily in a voting booth. We can go and vote maybe and hope that somebody else changes things. Okay, great. But the real power that you have is what you do with your own money. And that's, for me, I've been a strong advocate of saying, hey, look, we're not talking about doing anything illegal. Take completely legal and legitimate steps to reduce the amount that you owe. There's 1,000,001 things that anybody can do to do this. Even if you're an employee, if you're in the B quadrant, if you're in the I quadrant, even if you're in the S quadrant, there are things that you can do to reduce the amount that you owe. This is the most powerful way to actually affect change, is reducing the resources that these guys have.
Yeah, my whole game, as you guys know, is how to make millions of dollars and pay no taxes legally.
That's right.
So if I could plug my latest book coming out, Why the Rich Are Getting Richer, one of the reasons the rich are getting richer is they use debt and they don't pay taxes. Now, if you go say, well, how do they do that? Isn't it illegal? No, it's perfectly legal. But the reason there's no financial education in school, if they taught you that, the game is over. They say, well, why am I in school? Why am I working for money? The doctors and lawyers pay the highest taxes. They make so much money. Employee works hard. They pay more taxes. And on the other side of it are people like myself and even our President Trump, who admits to not paying tax and admits to being deeply in debt. You go, now, why is that? You have Clinton, who pays huge amounts of taxes because she's an attorney. And Obama is an employee. He paid 30% tax. And when he ran against Romney only paid 13% tax. And the American public, standing in the buffet line, goes, wonder what's for dinner. Rather than say, how does Obama pay 30% and Romney pay 13%? Why does Hillary pay 60% and Trump pays 0%? They don't have the temerity or the wherewithal or the gap between the synapses to ask that question. They said, oh, the roast beef looks good tonight.
By the way, Robert, I don't think you have to plug any of your books. Just saying, and even if you did, I'm sure everybody at this table would be more than happy to do that. I often tell people in my own audience that if you haven't read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, you should literally stop what you're doing right now and go out and get it and read it. And I tell people this. I said, if for whatever reason you can't afford it, I will buy you a copy, because it is that important, absolutely life-changing. But I think we're all really looking forward to the next book coming out.
I just plug it because the next book coming out, I call it Rich Dad, Poor Dad Graduate School, because I just assume people would know how a guy like myself or Trump or Kenny or us at the table make millions and pay no taxes, because it's really, that's what financial education is. But if you go to school, you get a job, you pay tax, and if you become a doctor, you pay even higher taxes. It doesn't make sense in my brain, you know what I mean? So that's why I speak. So The plug in the book again is Why the Rich Are Getting Richer. What is financial education really? It's not to save money and put your money in a 401k. I don't know what the heck they're thinking. Anyway, that's why I plug it.
Excellent.
So I just think Simon hit it right at the top of the show when he talked about personal responsibility. The victim mentality, the flip side of personal responsibility is being a victim.
Mentality.
Yeah, buffet mentality. But, the outsourcing of the responsibility to make my life better, I'm going to give that to the government. And that's philosophical. Ed, you talk all the time about the difference between collectivism and individualism. This is kind of the dividing line between people. We put different labels on it and there's different nuances to it. But if you boil it all down, there's really two schools of thought. Either you feel that you have responsibility yourself to take whatever circumstances you are in and use them to better yourself. And when you make yourself better and the people around you better, you first of all, you don't become a burden on the system. Second of all, you become a shining light of example and give people hope who are near you, who can see what you've done. And you also create intellectual property, how to do it, so you can teach others how to do it, Robert, which is what you've done, which is fab. You've changed millions of lives with your work.
And make a lot of money.
And you make a lot of money at the same time. And
Not
there's nothing
mutually exclusive.
And exactly.
And pay no tax.
Making money is about delivering value to the world. And if you do, then it's an exchange of value. You give value, you receive value. And if you give more value than you consume, you're going to get rich.
Okay, so can I plug Ed's book, The Creature from Jekyll Island? That is required reading in my company. Because I think one of your opening chapters is Bailout is the Name of the Game. And what I thought was hysterical after reading Creature from Jekyll Island, I'm watching Paulson, secretary who was with Goldman Sachs and the Treasury and all this. He says, we have to bail out the economy to save the people. If you had read Creature from Jekyll Island, you'd be on the floor laughing.
Except Lehman. We don't have to bail them out, right?
Yeah.
Just Goldman.
Well, because Lehman didn't play ball. Anyway, when Ed said, bailout is the name of the game, it's been happening all this time. If you read Ed's book, you would stand up and see this guy Paulson lying to the people because he knows better. He's head of the U.S. Treasury and the CEO of Goldman Sachs. And today, Goldman Sachs is in almost every central bank throughout the world. And if you haven't read Creature from Jekyll Island, you would not know what they're doing. Right, Ed?
Yeah, well, thank you for that. I don't have to plug my own book now. I appreciate that.
Well, it's easier to plug your book than my book.
Yeah,
I like looking at my book.
It would sound like my duty to plug your book. But no, really, it's my honor because I agree with everything that's been said about your fantastic work. And it's written in such a way that, see, mine tends to be a little bit more academic, got lots of footnotes, references, and so forth. But yours cuts right to the brain and the heart. People get it real fast. They don't have to look something up in the library to confirm it. It's right on.
The thing that I find interesting, Robert, you're talking about this, about the things that we do. You can make money here, you can generate cash flow, you can make your money work for you, you can pay no tax, you can be successful, you can help people and be successful and not pay tax. And the thing is that you actually educate people on how to do that, right? It's not like you're saying, I have this secret, I'm going to keep it all for myself. You put it out there for the entire world, and yet there are still so many people that will listen to that and go, I can't do that. That's not me. Other people do that. That's impossible. There's something wrong. They keep coming up with excuses, and that's a huge part of the victim mentality. Is that it's literally you put it right there in front of people. And you explain it in extremely simple ways. I do a lot of this myself, and yet there's still so many things that people fill themselves up with these ideas of, I can't do that, that's not me, that's somebody else, and yet it's all right there.
Well, as Trump is finding out about the media comes after me all the time, comes after you, you know what I mean, is when you say what's really going on, the media has to attack you because that's what they're paid to do. The Wall Street Journal came after Trump's book and my book. We wrote a book called Why We Want You to Be Rich, because we were speaking about the crash of the middle class. The Wall Street Journal just trashed that book, just trashed it, because we spoke about the manipulation of the stock market. Now, who doesn't know the stock market's manipulated or the currency market's manipulated? But they have to discredit us. So that's why we keep going.
You know, often when people say, I want to understand, and they get handed the book or they buy the book and they start to have that experience of, wow, there is more than this, it leads them down this path where, and we've talked about this before, the rest of their friends aren't that way. Their family looks at them like they're crazy. I mean, you have to take the reins. But my mentor, Jim Rohn, said the amazing thing about the ladder of success is it's only crowded at the bottom. But so few people will reach the rung. Yeah, well, the book costs $20. Yeah, well, I have to read the book, and that's going to take a lot of time. I mean, there are things you have to do. It's not a one-way thing.
Well, I think the other thing is people, instinctively want to be right. You get to a level of maturity in life, you maybe have a degree of success, and then you think you've arrived and you don't want to be schooled. And what I've learned is I've been able, through the show and the association with you, Robert, and just hanging out with amazing people like at this table I'm sitting at right now, is that the most successful people that I've seen, almost without exception, are open-minded, they're curious, they are willing to experiment, they're not afraid to fail, they want to learn, and they understand that they don't know it all, and it's just completely different. You talk about two different classes of people, and it's just, we say all the time, how you think and what you believe affects what you do, and what you do affects the results you produce. You're not going to change the results in your life until you go back to the beginning of that process and change the way you think and what you believe, and you can't do that with a closed mind. You can't do that hanging out with the same people you've always hung out with. And if you do feel like you're alone, I mean, I told my kids when I was raising them, look, here's the thing. The problem with being a kid is you spend all your time trying to figure out how to fit in. I want to talk like everybody else. I want to look like everybody else. I want to do what everybody else is doing. I want to have what everybody else has. And then you grow up, and then you spend most of your adult life trying to figure out how to be outstanding. Start being outstanding at the beginning. Don't be afraid of being different. I mean, the world's richest man was a geek. He was a computer geek. He dropped out of college. And now he's, Bill Gates is the richest guy in the world, right? He didn't do that by doing what everybody else was doing. He was different. Zuckerberg was hiding in his dorm suite, coding software. I mean, these guys, they don't think like regular people. They think differently. And the key is, how quickly can you get around other people that think differently and learn to think differently yourself? Because when you do that, you change what you think and you change what you believe, which is what Rich Dad Poor Dad does. It's a paradigm-breaking book.
Let me promote a book there, and that's the fact that Rich Dad Poor Dad is now coming out in the 20th anniversary, right, this very week. Congratulations, right. 20 years, the best-selling financial book in history, and a little bit new take on the book with some updates and so forth. But I think what part of the big ability there, the hope, is that touching younger people. Simon, you every year run an amazing entrepreneurship program that is, I know, near and dear to your heart, based on that very model. This year we invited some young adults, 18 to 25, and yesterday they had a chance to sit with you, Robert, you, Simon, and Ken McElroy, which I can't imagine a better influence at that age. Talk about the heart for young people and how that can be the future.
Yeah, that was, again, my fourth time being part of this. That session that you, me, and Kenny did yesterday was the highlight of all 4 years of being part of this summit. I'm grateful to have had the opportunity to do that. Education is a huge deal for me, and I do this entrepreneurship camp every year. It's hugely important. I think this, I'll say, millennial generation, these guys have I think a lot to overcome. There's a lot of bad, reputational issues with that. And, Robert wanted to focus a lot yesterday, talking to these guys, the group yesterday wanted to focus a lot on mission. We spent a lot of time on mission. We spent a lot of time on integrity.
Life's purpose.
Right.
What are you here for?
Yeah, and it's a weird thing because this bizarre educational system that we have. One of my comments to the guys yesterday was, it's okay to not know what you want to do with your life. It seems bizarre to expect an 18-year-old kid to know exactly what they want to do to the point that you should indebt yourself $70,000 and then have to spend the rest of your life, the next 15, 20 years as an indentured servant, paying down a massive amount of debt for which you don't really actually receive any real knowledge. Right. Yeah. It was a great session yesterday and was really trying to, again, shift that thinking, shift that paradigm.
If I could say something, what Robert said about being right. You see, what you did for what was right for the baby boom generation is wrong today. Right. And when I talk to the older generation, what do you mean don't save money? What do you mean get into debt? What do you mean the 401k is risky? Because they were taught, prior to the year 2000, that was the right thing to do. But now the living proof is in that it's the wrong thing to do. Now, interest rates may go up and down and all that, but people have a hard time admitting that something has changed and they're still doing the right thing. You know, we won't mention names, but we have people that still tell you to cut up your credit card. So that's not going to make you rich. And how do you check into a hotel or book an airline ticket or live in this world without a credit card? And the other person says, live debt-free. Well, if you understood the creature from Jekyll Island, you understood the monetary and fiscal systems of the world, it's all based on debt anyway. So rather than live debt-free, learn how to manage debt, which is what the real estate guys do, because real estate is based on debt and taxes. You know, so the more debt you have, the less tax you pay. And for the older person, my generation, baby boom generation, it doesn't compute. You know, that's like I have a hard time using my cell phone, but I understand debt and taxes.
Well, I think in closing, we could certainly talk for hours about this, and in the limited time we have left. Simon, what I always appreciate about you is that you paint the picture that there are some challenges ahead, and Robert, you talk about this, Ed, you've been talking about this forever, that there are some hard times coming and potentially lots of things could happen. But at the end of the day, humanity is something you can bet on.
Absolutely. We can see now, look, there are a lot of financial bubbles. The stock market is at quite risky, lofty valuations that in many respects don't make a lot of sense. Companies that barely earn money trade for, or companies that even lose money trade for tens of billions of dollars. It doesn't really make any sense. I think the general consensus here was that, particularly in the U.S. market, real estate is quite pricey, and people are really looking for a correction. We can see huge debt bubbles. We can see essentially money bubbles, a bubble in currencies themselves. I was talking a lot in my remarks about how the central bank, the largest, most systematically important central bank in the world, is rapidly engineering its own insolvency. None of these things really make any sense, but you're right. The uninterruptible trend throughout all of human history has been the ascent of our own species. And smart people learn, smart people educate. Things change. There are crashes and corrections and resets from time to time. But you know what? The rules change. Smart people educate themselves. They understand what's going on. They ensure that they don't become victims. They learn the new rules, and they succeed and prosper.
Well, you don't have a book we can promote, but you do write every single day. Notes from the Field is an amazing thing to read in your email every day that you do it. Sometimes you're busy on a cruise and can't put it out as often as you might like. But sovereignman.com is where you'll be able to find Simon's great work. Ed, what do you think? We've got all these young folks on the boat, and many of them exposed to your ideas for the first time ever. And I see the lights are coming on.
Yeah, it's a great feeling, especially at my age, I used to think all the old timers would talk about, oh, how wonderful it is that I can pass something on to my grandchildren in the future. And I think, hey, let's get on. This is now, But now that I'm at the other end of this, I get it, And it's really a great feeling when you see some young kid right fresh in the middle of like high school even, and I've seen it in grade school. These kids are alive with this hunger to acquire knowledge, and their minds are so open. That doesn't mean it's just wide open, because they have the ability to discern whether you're giving them a line or not, and it's amazing. I think people lose that as they get older. They get indoctrinated, Say, well, we know this is true, and they stop questioning. But these kids question everything, And anyway, it's a good, very, very good feeling, and I'd like to address, just in closing, I'll try and keep this short, Simon's optimism, which I share, by the way, in spite of the fact that we have to, because of our assignment here, we have to talk about reality. We have to talk about that red pill, and things are looking pretty grim. And how can you hold, a positive attitude in that? And I think one of the things we have to be aware of on the negative side, so we don't get swamped by it, is the fact there is something new, actually new in the world, and that is the improvement of the efficiency of communication and the technology that has developed to affect the mind. Mind control has become, I would say, not a brand new weapon of war, but a highly developed, more developed weapon of war than it ever has been. So I think the most dangerous weapon we face is the ability of the oligarchy, let's just call it that, to affect attitudes, to engineer opinions, And that, to me, is the most powerful weapon that could ever be developed, because you can control a person, let them control themselves. It's like you see people walking around with these earphones and they're bopping up and down, and I think, they're programming themselves for something. Why don't they take the earphones off and listen to one of my lectures? And read a book or something like that. But seriously, we do have this technological monster that is upon us. And, we publish a news service called needtoknow.news. And almost every issue we have a story about the amount of research that's being done by the military, DARPA, or some other agency of the government on how to control minds and attitudes and contour news and information and all that sort of thing. So anyway, I think this is something we have to be aware of. We have to counter it. We do have the tools. And so I come back to Simon's optimism, and I share it because I do think that unless they drug us all completely with physical drugs, the human spirit will come to the top. And the desire to be free, the desire to follow truth is so strong that unless they genetically engineer us, I think they're going to lose.
Robert, what do you think about that?
Well, Buckminster Fuller, the inventor of the geodesic dome, was my teacher, and he talked about generalized principles. And the one thing that keeps me optimistic, he says, we're hitting a period of emergency right now. And he says the most beautiful part of the word emergency is the base word called emerge. And so we're going to emerge into a whole nother paradigm of life. And I just want to be part of that, not part of the part that's dying. So I'm very optimistic.
Well, it would be remiss of us if we didn't say happy birthday, congratulations on the 20th anniversary of an amazing book. We all had a great party last night.
It was fantastic. It was hard to take. It was so humbling because I don't do it for the accolades. I just do it because kind of a mission.
We know that's the case, and really last night was just you've touched so many lives. There's no way, I said at the party, there's no way any of us could begin to pay you back for the effect you've had in our lives. And our mission, I think, is to pass that on. And I know, Simon, you write all the time, and that's changing lives. Ed Usage continues to be your life's work. We just appreciate all of you for being open, for sharing, for being questioning, for being students as well as teachers. Thanks for being here, guys.
Thank you
very much.
Thank you, Real Estate Guys.
You're to the Real Estate Guys radio program. More when we come back. I'm your host, Robert Helms.
Real estate investment advice right in your mailbox. Sign up for the free Real Estate Guys newsletter at realestateguysradio.com.
Are you ready to profit in paradise? Hi, it's Robert Helms, and if you think real estate investing means tenants, toilets, and termites, think again. Located just a short plane ride from the U.S., a virtually untouched paradise awaits, the beautiful country of Belize. When you go to Belize with the Real Estate Guys, you'll spend 4 fabulous days discovering one of the most intriguing real estate markets I've ever seen. With its jungle rainforests, pristine beaches, and 81-degree turquoise water, Belize is one of the most beautiful places on earth. Plus, it's considered one of the top 7 tax havens in the world. Belize property is on the rise, and many experts think the best is yet to come. But don't just take my word for it. Come experience Belize firsthand at our upcoming investor field trip. When you join us, you'll discover the many reasons we love Belize, like tremendously undervalued beachfront land, super low taxes, ease of doing business, and so much more. Get the details at realestateguysradio.com. Just click on events. See paradise for yourself. Click events at realestateguysradio.com, and I'll see you in beautiful Belize.
Hi, this is Patrick Donahoe, CEO of Paradigm Life. Wall Street and banks spend billions of dollars per year in advertising with the goal to convince you that they are the solution. But take a look around. None of their advice has worked. If you're listening to this, odds are pretty good that you're already a real estate investor, or at least becoming one. So why do you do it? Is it to hedge inflation, the tax benefits, or maybe it's to get your money away from Wall Street? It's because of these benefits and so many more that I created the Real Estate Investor's Guide to the Perpetual Wealth Strategy. When you combine successful real estate investing with the Perpetual Wealth Strategy, you have the recipe for what has helped the wealthy to establish their financial well-being for decades. You can download the Real Estate Investor's Guide to the Perpetual Wealth Strategy today by clicking the Resources tab on the Real Estate Guys Radio homepage. Don't wait. Go download it now.
Hi, this is Donald Trump, and you're listening to The Real Estate Guys.
And welcome back to the Real Estate Guys radio program. Thanks so much for tuning into the show and this amazing conversation. We really had no idea where it was going to go, and it went all over the place, but hopefully you enjoyed it as much as we did sitting in the room. Obviously, we mentioned a few books, so right now it is your chance to play real estate trivia and win a few of them. We do this every week on the show, usually about midway through the show, but a little different format this week. Here's what you're going to do when you hear the question and think you know the answer. Send your best guess to trivia@realestateguysradio.com. Trivia@realestateguysradio.com. Include your name, your physical mailing address, and the answer to the question. If you're the first person that gets it right, we're going to send you 2 books, a copy of Robert Kiyosaki's 20th anniversary edition of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and The Creature from Jekyll Island by G. Edward Griffin. Both of those can be yours. Last week on the Real Estate Guys, we asked this. There are 4 U.S. states that ban billboards. Name them. Well, the 4 states are Hawaii, that happened in the 1920s, Vermont, which happened in 1968, Maine in the early 80s, and Alaska in 1998. Here's our real estate trivia question for this week. With all that talk of buffets, here's a question about food and real estate. According to Guinness World Records, where was the largest sandwich made? Yep, the largest sandwich in the world. Where was it made? If you know or just want to take a guess, send us your best answer to trivia@realestateguysradio.com. Trivia@realestateguysradio.com. Include your name and your mailing address. So if you're the winner, you'll get a copy of The Creature from Jekyll Island by Mr. G. Edward Griffin and the 20th anniversary copy of Rich Dad, Poor Dad from Robert Kiyosaki. That is our belated real estate trivia question today. It may be obvious from today's show and all of the other shows where we talk about the Investor Summit just what an extraordinary event it is. We are already knee-deep in planning for the 2018 Investor Summit at Sea. Registration is not yet open. Only the alumni have had a chance to register, but it's about to be. So if you're interested in hanging out with amazing folks for a week that will change your life, the best thing you can do right now is go to the website at realestateguysradio.com and get on our advanced notice list. If you go to realestateguysradio.com and click on Summit at Sea at the top, it'll take you to our advanced notice list page. Click on the blue button that says Get on the Advanced Notice List. As amazing as the 15th Annual Investor Summit was this year, next year is already shaping up to be even better. It's hard to even say that based on the incredible event we had this year, but we are working super hard. We have not announced any of the faculty members yet, but we will tell you that at least one of the gentlemen besides Russ and I that you heard today is absolutely positively making a reappearance, and it's quite likely that 2 or perhaps 3 will actually show up again. We never know with everyone's schedules this far out. They've all been invited. The best thing for you to do is get on the advanced notice list at realestateguysradio.com. A huge thanks to Robert Kiyosaki, Ed Griffin, and Simon Black for sharing their thoughts and their insights today and during the entire week of our Summit at Sea. In the coming few weeks, we have some amazing interviews with some new guests. So until then, go out and make some equity happen.
This episode of the Real Estate Guys radio show is brought to you by Paradigm Life. Powerful cash management strategies using life insurance. Learn more at beyourbank.com. Mid-South Home Buyers. Low-cost, turnkey cash flow properties in Memphis, Tennessee. Corporate Direct. Asset protection strategies for real estate investors. From attorney and Rich Dad advisor Garrett Sutton. Find these and other great companies under the Resources tab at realestateguysradio.com. To learn how you can expose your product or service to the Real Estate Guys audience, call 888-489-7723 extension 4. That's 888-489-7723 extension 4. Or use the feedback page at realestateguysradio.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week right here on the Real Estate Guys Radio Show.